Ever scroll through your Facebook feed and think, wow, some people, you know the ones with the perfectly posed selfies and the endless status updates about their amazing lives?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive takes us into the fascinating and maybe slightly concerning link
hmm
between Facebook and narcissism,
Yeah,
going way beyond those everyday observations.
definitely. We're diving into a 2008 research paper from the University of Georgia.
Okay.
And while that might seem like ancient history and internet years,
Yeah, it does.
the findings are surprisingly relevant even today.
Okay, let's unpack this research paper.
Okay.
But before we get lost in likes and friend requests,
Right.
let's define narcissism in this context.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about someone who loves looking in the mirror,
Right.
right?
Psychologists look for specific traits like having an inflated sense of self-importance,
Okay.
craving constant admiration,
Right.
and struggling to understand others' perspectives.
Okay.
These researchers wanted to see if those traits actually translate into online behavior,
Okay.
specifically on Facebook,
Yeah.
which was the social media giant back then.
Makes sense. Facebook was the place to be in
Yeah.
2008,
Yeah.
especially for the college students at the heart of this study.
Right.
I'm guessing that structured format of profiles and friends lists made it easier for researchers to analyze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't just observe behavior from afar.
Okay.
They had participants take the narcissistic personality inventory,
Okay.
a standard measure for assessing narcissism.
Gotcha.
And then, get this,
Yeah.
they got permission to analyze those participants' actual Facebook profiles.
Talk about real world data.
I know, right?
Did the researchers find any correlation between how someone scored on that narcissism test
Yes.
and how they acted on Facebook?
It turns out, yes, quite a strong one.
Interesting.
For example, the higher someone scored on the narcissistic personality inventory,
Okay.
the more Facebook friends and wall posts they tended to have,
Wow.
more activity overall.
So more friends equals a bigger audience to admire them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It does seem to line up with that need for admiration we talked about.
Mhm.
Did that self-promotion aspect show up in other ways?
It did.
Okay.
Those who scored higher in narcissism were more likely to choose profile pictures
Okay.
that emphasized their attractiveness,
Okay.
perhaps even choosing a more flattering photo
Yeah.
compared to someone lower in those traits.
So playing up those angles for maximum impact.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if someone is already naturally charismatic.
Right.
Does that translate into online charm as well?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You'd think narcissists,
Uh-huh.
often perceived as charming,
Right.
would have highly rated Facebook quotes.
Yeah.
Right.
You would think so. Yeah.
But that wasn't the case.
Oh,
Their quotes weren't rated as highly as one might expect.
it's a fascinating twist.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Does the online environment somehow dampen their charm?
It could be that context matters.
Okay.
In person, narcissists can be very engaging. Yeah.
But in a less personal medium like Facebook,
All right.
their charm might not translate as well. Or
Okay.
maybe people are just more skeptical of online personas in general.
So you're saying a dazzling personality in real life doesn't guarantee online success.
It seems that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But this makes me think, if narcissists are curating their online image so carefully,
Right.
can you actually spot one just by looking at their Facebook profile?
That's what the researchers wanted to find out.
Okay.
They showed these Facebook profiles to complete strangers
Okay.
and asked them to rate the owner's narcissism level.
Okay.
And get this,
Yeah.
the strangers were surprisingly accurate.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical.
Okay.
How could they be so accurate based on just a Facebook profile?
Well, it wasn't just guesswork.
Okay.
The strangers' ratings actually correlated with the profile owner's scores on the narcissistic personality inventory,
Wow.
which suggests a real link between online presentation and underlying personality traits.
Interesting.
And they weren't just good at spotting narcissism either.
Oh. What else were they able to pick up on?
Strangers were also good at judging what researchers call agency.
Okay.
Those traits like assertiveness and confidence
Okay.
that often go hand in hand with narcissism.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It tracks that a confident person might have a more confident looking Facebook page.
Right.
But were there any specific parts of the profile that stood out to those making the judgments?
Uh-huh.
Did those carefully chosen selfies really give it away?
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
The number of friends the
Yeah.
attractiveness of the main photo,
Okay.
and how self-promoting that photo was
Yeah.
were particularly influential in shaping the stranger's perceptions.
So it's that first impression, that
Yes,
snapshot you get when you land on someone's page,
exactly.
that really colors your judgment
Yes,
more so than other elements.
exactly.
Interesting.
That initial impression seems to carry a lot of weight.
Influencing how people perceive everything else on the profile.
Right.
And this leads us to some even bigger questions about online identity
Okay.
and how it's shaped.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those bigger questions.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for us regular Facebook users just trying to navigate this digital landscape?
Well, think about it. If people who score higher in narcissism are drawn to accumulating more friends and engagement online,
Right?
it stands to reason that a social network like Facebook might attract a higher concentration of those personalities
Okay.
compared to, say, a random group offline.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
It's like a self-selecting group in a way.
Right.
But are we saying Facebook actually makes people more narcissistic?
Well,
That almost seems like a chicken or the egg question.
it really is.
Yeah.
And while this particular study couldn't definitively say if Facebook causes narcissism to increase,
Okay.
they did raise a critical question.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What's the question?
Think about the environment social media creates.
Uh.
Does being constantly surrounded by even subtle self-promotion,
Right.
carefully chosen images,
Uh-huh.
and striving for validation change our own behavior over time?
It makes you wonder, does it make us more concerned with presenting a certain image,
Hmm.
highlighting our own highlight reel, so to speak?
Yeah,
Because if everyone else is doing it,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a question we all grapple with,
Right.
consciously or not,
Wow.
in this digital age.
yeah.
Social media has this built-in feedback loop of validation,
Yeah.
likes, comments, shares,
Yeah.
and it's easy to get caught up in chasing those external markers of approval.
And that need for validation, isn't that one of the hallmarks of narcissism that we discussed earlier?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So while we can't say Facebook causes narcissism,
Right?
this research certainly raises questions about the potential influence of such an environment,
All right.
especially over time.
And remember, this research was done back in 2008. It makes you wonder how much more pronounced those findings might be today
Right?
with Instagram, TikTok, influencer culture.
Exactly.
We're bombarded with curated versions of people's lives now.
Absolutely. It's like this constant highlight reel playing on a loop.
Yeah.
And that brings us to perhaps the most thought-provoking aspect of this whole research paper.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
This study looked at strangers' judging profiles,
Right.
but what if those profiles belonged to people they actually knew?
Okay.
Friends, family, colleagues,
Yeah.
judging each other in this online space.
Right.
Would their ratings be even more accurate?
Now that you mention it, that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Right.
Would knowing someone offline make us more likely to see through a facade or less likely because we want to believe the best in them?
It's a fascinating question.
Right.
The researchers even pondered whether people,
Yeah.
especially those high in narcissistic traits,
Okay.
might actually tone down their self-promotion. If they knew their audience included people from their offline lives.
It's like having a work Facebook versus a play Facebook.
Right.
I can see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you wonder how much of what we see on social media is a genuine reflection of someone's personality,
Right.
and how much is a carefully crafted persona designed to get a specific reaction.
Right.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really makes you question how much of what we see online is truly authentic
Right.
and how much is a performance.
It speaks to a fundamental question about identity in the digital age.
Yeah.
Are we all becoming more narcissistic or just more adept at performing it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Are we all just playing characters in each other's news feeds?
To some extent, perhaps. We
Yeah.
present the version of ourselves that we think will be liked,
Right.
admired,
Right.
even envied.
Yeah.
And that pressure to project a certain image can be amplified in the echo chamber of social media.
It's like we curate a more idealized version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Get positive reinforcement from our network.
Right.
And that encourages us to keep curating and so on.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a cycle that can be tough to break free from.
Especially when you consider how these platforms are designed.
Right.
Algorithms prioritize content that gets engagement.
Right.
And what's more engaging than a bit of self-promotion?
Exactly.
It was drama.
It creates a bit of a recipe for, if not full-blown narcissism,
Uh-huh.
then certainly a heightened focus on the self.
And this research was focused on Facebook.
Yeah.
What about the implications now with platforms like Instagram, TikTok, the whole influencer
Yeah.
phenomenon?
Whoa, yeah.
Feels like we're constantly bombarded with these seemingly perfect lives.
It's true.
Yeah.
The sheer volume of curated content has exploded since this study was published back in 2008.
Right.
It's becoming increasingly difficult to separate genuine self-expression from calculated self-promotion.
And that constant comparison to others, it's got to have some kind of impact, right?
It does. While it's hard to definitively say what that impact is,
Right.
it's definitely something to be mindful of as we navigate these digital spaces.
So where does this leave us?
Well,
Are we all doomed to become slaves to the self-promotion cycle?
wow.
Should we just delete all our accounts and live off the grid?
That's certainly one way to go,
Yeah.
but there's a middle ground.
Okay.
We can be more aware of the potential influence of social media,
Okay.
both on ourselves and others.
Right.
We can make a conscious effort to be more authentic in our online interactions
Right.
and prioritize genuine connection rather than just likes and followers.
It's about being mindful about how we use these platforms,
Right.
what we consume on them,
Exactly.
finding that balance between staying connected and staying true to ourselves.
Exactly. It's about using social media as a tool for connection and communication
Yeah.
without letting it dictate how we see ourselves and the world.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about. It's amazing how one research paper can unlock so much about our relationship with the online world.
It really is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. And for those listening, the next time you're scrolling through your feeds, take a moment to reflect.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you feeling? And why? Are you engaging with content that truly resonates with you?
Right.
Or are you caught in a cycle of comparison and self-promotion?
Those are great questions to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, folks, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is power,
Absolutely.
and a little self-awareness goes a long way in this ever-evolving digital world.
It really does.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay curious.